there, Booksy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with 3 more nonfiction recommendations for you from books that I have read recently and absolutely loved, and that I think that if you pick them up, you'll enjoy them as well. One of them is a book that I started in October but just finished since this month has started, and it's a reread for me because I previously read the ebook version as a galley from the publishers, but I finished rereading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. The subtitle of this one is Origins of Our Discontent. That's the American subtitle. There is another version in Europe, and in a previous video I told you what that subtitle is. It is The Lies They Tell Us or something like that. But Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent is the United States title. Isabel Wilkerson is otherwise known as having written The Warmth of Other Suns, but she is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist from before. Her books, however, are fantastic. And in this one, she talks about the society in America and how we have been living with a caste system that is similar to the caste system in India, where African Americans have been placed at the lowest levels of the hierarchy in this country. And she talks about how that came about, why it came about, and why it has been sustained. This, I think, is a must-read for everyone, particularly those who don't believe that there is systematic racism inbred in the society in all levels. People who say that because we've had a black president that Americans are not racist, or that America doesn't have racist systems. There's just so much about this book that is riveting. That's the child taking apart everything that I put in. Can you stop dismantling all of the systems that Mommy has put in place? Thank you. She moved on. In this one, Isabel Wilkerson talks about her experience as an African American professional and how sometimes she is treated by people who don't believe that she could be in that position just because the first thing that they see when they see her is her race. And she talks about the origins of race and the origins of our discontent. She talks about how people from other countries who didn't necessarily think of themselves as white or black, when they come to the United States, that you have to decide, or it's decided for you, where in the spectrum you lie. So if you're more white or more black, so people of color, as opposed to all the people who are white. And she talks about where the term Caucasian comes from and how random it is. She talks about people of Aryan descent and what that means, and Nordic descent and what that means. There's so much in this book. I have lots of thoughts on this. My husband is going to be reading it, so I'm going to be discussing it with him in more detail. But he's a social studies teacher, and so we've talked about the caste system in India and how it came about and why it continues to persist. Both the caste system in India and the caste system in the United States can be justified by religious texts, and how people who are higher up in the hierarchy have consoled themselves with the idea that the people at the bottom, one, that they don't mind, that they actually like being subordinate because they were born to be subordinate, they are bred to be subordinate, and they want to continue living their destiny as subordinate creatures. That's one. And then the other is that this is the way God wants it. So in India, there's the belief that people who are at the bottom, the untouchables, that they're that way because they did something in a previous life, and this is how they have to now pay penance. And so I don't know if there is a corresponding statement that you'd make in the Christian text, but Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. I think everyone should read this, put it on your gift list. That's the first book that I wanted to mention here. For the next 2 books that I wanted to talk about are books that I was gifted by Doris from All the Books, and so I wanted to talk about them together because I read 2 of them this month. So the first one is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and this is the story of William Kamkwamba, who was a young boy growing up in Malawi, and this is his story, his memoir, written in his words, and he has a co-writer who's Bryan, so both their names appear on the front, but this is William Kamkwamba's story. William Kamkwamba was growing up in Malawi in a poor village. His father and mother had a lot of children, but he was the only son. But even though in communities like that and in cultures like that, the boy is the one who's sent to school, his family just didn't have enough money to pay his school fees, and so he had to drop out of school as a young teenager. I think he said like middle school, and he and his cousins started to observe things, and he was motivated to try to figure out how they worked. And so they saw someone come to visit their home who was riding a bicycle, and that bicycle had a dynamo. And let's see something here. Eat another strawberry. Good job. Do my video with me. Okay. So yeah, William Kamkwamba. So he's growing up in Malawi, and his family is living in a rural part in Malawi. So he talks about how they don't have electricity because most of the people who have electricity are living in the city, and so they get electricity from the grid, and it's expensive. And his family doesn't have a lot of money to spare. Again, he's not going to school because they can't pay the school fees. But they're also kind of subsistence farmers, so they grow enough maize for their family and to store for the winter months. But they sell a little bit to pay some of the bills, and they just don't make enough to pay for electricity. Also, because the electricity supply is inconsistent at best, so the fact that a person has electricity is not really a guarantee that they'll have lights during the night. So William Kamkwamba is motivated to provide electricity for his family, and so he figures out from reading these books that he checks out from the community library when he is no longer going to school. So middle school dropout, reading science books, integrated science and physics books, and figuring out how things work, how engines work, how dynamos work, how to build a windmill. And he builds first a small windmill using scrap, rubbish, garbage, and repurposing things, and it works. And so he builds an even bigger windmill. And so this picture is more a representation of what he does. So he builds a windmill that can power his house, and then he learns how to build solar systems so they're able to store electricity. And then he builds things for his entire village. And then he goes back to school. This is such a motivating story because this kid is a kid doing things that government doesn't do. It is so much. And then the fact that he has to leave school because his parents won't pay the fees, and he doesn't have any hard feelings against the people who kick him out of school, because after I don't want to tell you any more of the story, but this is such a motivating story. There's a Netflix film adaptation of this book, and man, I want to watch it. But also, this is the young reader's version of the book. It was written, I guess, as a regular memoir for adults, but this is the young reader's edition, so it read very easily, and I completely recommend it just because the person who's writing is a young person, and so I feel like scripting it for young people makes it just so much more accessible of a story. So I'm going to be giving my copy to a young boy who I think will be motivated by this story, maybe motivated to build something for himself. Not necessarily a windmill, just because, you know, we live in New York City and that's not the issue that we need to solve. But I think that this story will be motivating to other kids, because there are lots of problems for everybody to work on. So highly recommending this one for you and for the children in your life who probably need a little inspiration to do something bigger than what they've been doing before. And before I move on, I just wanted to show you, because there are pictures in here, and there are pictures of William Kamkwamba's family and some of the things that he did. So I thought this was a fantastic story. So I'll be talking about this in other places. You'll hear more from me about that one. And then the last book I wanted to talk about in this video is Lab Girl by Hope Jahren. Before I go, this is Hope Jaren's picture. And even though in this, at the end of the book, she is like a 50-year-old woman, and so she's looking back at her experiences. For most of the book, she is a young female scientist trying to make her way in a culture that doesn't really believe that women are great investigators. So she has to fight for all the recognition and all the support for what she wants to do. And she is a plant scientist. So Lab Girl is the story of Hope Jaren's experience. This is memoir slash science. And it's told in small chapters that intersperse her memoir with her telling us some of the science of plants. Her field of research is paleobotany, I think, and so she's one of those people who figures out that there's a question that we can ask of science, question that we can ask that the plants can answer, and she studies specimens and figures out the answer to the question that she asked. It's interesting, it's fascinating. She talks about the culture, the male-dominated culture, and having to prove herself as a female in this world. She also talks about her friendship, this man that she meets in the lab environment and who she continues to work with for several decades. And she gives us anecdotes of their experiences, the things that they do. She paints very colorful pictures of what they accomplish. But more than that, this is the story of love for science, love for discovery, and some of the things that we can ask ourselves, some of the things that we can ask the world, and how we can go about finding those answers. I thought it was a fantastic read. Eat it, don't put it on the floor. Okay. Early in the book, I think, does it have a prologue? Early in the book, she talks about her family. Growing up as a woman of Norse ancestry, I forget now where her parents are from. But she talks about the fact that they are these strong silent types, so they're not very effusive with their affection, and that she doesn't think that she can be a mother. What does being a mother really mean? And early on, in the beginning of the book, she mentions to us that she has a family. But for most of the book, we don't see her being able to sustain a family. We don't see her being able to get into the place where she could get a family. And so it's really interesting. I love when a book tells me kind of how it's going to end. So I don't spend the entire read just kind of focusing on something that I want. I know that it's going to happen. And it's really interesting to see how it gets there. So this is a fantastic read. It is the story of a woman climbing to ascend that ceiling that was built to try to limit her, but deciding that she won't be limited. So she's climbing above that ceiling. But it's also about the people that she takes along with her. It's about that journey to recognition for herself, the journey to acceptance by other people, but also about the science. And like I said, it's told in these alternating chapters where we have her memoir, her anecdotes, and the science about the plants and how those stories kind of intermingle. And I thought it was fascinating. So you'll be hearing more from me about these books, because I can't imagine that I won't try to include this in some other kind of wrap-up in some place, in some way. So Lab Girl, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and Caste. So African-American woman, African man, and American woman. So that's diversity right there. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll be back next time, and I hope you join me for it. Let's chat in the comments. I'd love to hear from you if you've read any of these, or if they're on your TBR books that you want to check out, or if hearing me talk about them today makes you more inclined to pick them up. I'd love to chat with you about that as well. So thank you so much for watching this video. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, happy reading. Bye. 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 Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my booktube channel. Bye. More strawberry? Okay. I think I'll eat it.